What's up, guys? It's Lisa here with Keller Williams South Tampa, coming at you again with another Millennial Monday. All right, so please forgive me. I am getting over a cold, and I imagine I sound pretty phlegmy still. I don't know. So anyway, today's video is going to be a little bit longer, full disclosure. And this is a topic that is very important to me. This was inspired by an episode of this show called Explained on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, it's really interesting. There's a bunch of like weird stuff on there that you can learn about. But anyway, so this episode of Explained was on the wealth gap and how housing has had a major impact on that. And that resonated with me so much because that is such a big part of why I do what I do. And this is really what motivates me when things are hard, right? So I want to talk to you guys about the importance of homeownership and how you can help yourself by not being a renter anymore when the time is right. So let's talk about this, okay? I've got a script today because there's important stuff that I don't want to miss out on, all right? So the number one thing I want to go over is that not everyone needs to buy a house right now, all right? So who should not buy a house? You should not buy a house if you have no idea where you're going to be in the next 3 to 5 years. You should not buy a house if your credit is so bad that you're only qualified for very predatory loans or your debt to income's too high. At that point, what you really should do is focus on getting your ducks in a row so that you are in a good position to buy. Just as a rule of thumb, I wouldn't expect to start seeing any real equity in your house for at least 3 years. And that's what I will tell you as your realtor. It's what I'll tell you right now. Could it happen faster? Absolutely. Could you also not have equity in 3 years? Could the market swing in the other direction? Absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and BS you about that. You know, the market can change. So you have to know that going into it. With real estate, this is a long-term move. This is not a short-term gain, right? This isn't the stock market where you're just going to day trade. Anyway, so that being said, why shouldn't you rent? So there are a couple of big things that I want to talk about why you shouldn't rent, and half of them are like, numbers, and the other half are personal. Basically, overwhelmingly, at least in Tampa, I can't speak for anywhere else, but it is more affordable across the board to rent a single family home, it's more affordable to buy a single family home than it is to rent one, right? So I wanted to give you guys a real world example. I'm sure you've heard of the neighborhood Seminole Heights. It's the neighboring neighborhood to where I live. And it's a really hot market. A lot of people want to live there. And so right now, if you wanted to get a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in old Seminole Heights proper, you're going to pay about $2,100 a month in rent, okay? The fair market value of that same home is $256,000 roundabout, right? So let's talk about what you would pay in a mortgage. Let's just say that you put 0% down. Maybe it's a VA loan. Maybe, I don't know, you're putting 0% down. So your total monthly payment, factoring in realistic taxes, insurance, PMI, all that fun stuff, is going to be $1,607.70 per month. That's if you put nothing down. Again, probably VA, right? You still have to pay for closing costs. You don't get away without paying anything. But I'm just saying, you have 100% full balance of that loan and you're still paying, I should have done the math on this, but hundreds of dollars less every month, right? So let's just say that you go the FHA route and you put 3.5% down. So 3.5% down on that house would drop your monthly payment to $1,559.89. So I mean, not a bad deal, guys. Definitely gonna save you money as far as the cost per month, right? In general, your dollar will lose value. This is something that I've talked about in previous videos. It's just true. Like the dollar is designed to depreciate. And, there are savings accounts that honestly don't do you any favors, which is a whole different thing. And I'm not a financial analyst, so let's not get into that. But that being said, real estate over time appreciates. Again, does it go like this? Absolutely, but this is a long-term move. You ride out the storms, right? So if you're serious and this is the right house for you and you actually can afford to live there and it works for you, it's a way better deal. All right, you know what to expect when you own your house. There are only really a few variables when you have a fixed mortgage, let me just put that caveat on there. If you've got a fixed mortgage, only a couple of things that are really gonna change on your monthly mortgage payment and that's going to be your taxes and insurance, right? So when you file for a homestead, you shelter yourself from paying like outrageous taxes every year. And, you know, if you shop around for insurance, if they try to jack up your rate, you know, it's pretty common to do too. I do that myself. All right, so when you're renting, you obviously don't have that same luxury. You're at the will of your landlord and the surrounding market, right? So that's another piece of freedom that you get financially as a homeowner. Whew. All right, so it's also works as a forced savings account. Don't get me wrong, you're not paying a ton of money into principal, especially at the beginning of your loan, but it is still a forced savings account. So that's an added benefit that you get as well. And your home can be paid off over time, allowing you to really minimize your overhead costs in retirement, which, I mean, to me is a no-brainer. I would hate to have to pay rent in my golden years. You know, I'm just trying to like live my best life and, you know, get my oxygen machine or whatever it is that I'm gonna need, right? And there are also tax benefits. I'm not like the best on explaining those tax benefits, but they exist, and you can, you know, I know in previous years they were a little better than they are now. Well, whatever, listen, there are tax benefits, and there are no tax benefits to being a renter. All right, so more personal reasons. Basically, this is my firm opinion and belief is that the best way, the most efficient way to build generational wealth for yourself, your children, your family, is through real estate. And there's a lot of historical context to this, and I could make a whole video just on this topic, so I'll leave it at that. But real estate builds historic wealth, especially when done correctly. And speaking of family, there is the psychological impact of having a house to call your own when you have children is huge for those kids. It gives them a stable foundation. They have a place that they can call home. They're not constantly moving from place to place, switching schools, making new friends. I mean, when I was a kid, we did that a lot. And I don't know what it's like I didn't have the experience of staying in a stable house throughout my elementary years, but I will tell you that, you know, going into high school, middle school, it was a lot better for me. I really enjoyed that experience, right? And you start to build equity for your forever home, right? Like a lot of people get really caught up. Oh, before we get into that, pets. You don't have to just have kids. This is the other thing. Pets. If you're renting, you're at the will of your landlord with your pets. So if you have, like I have 3 cats and maybe 2 rabbits, good luck finding a place to rent. So like I pray to God that the mortgage company never comes knocking on his door, because I cannot get a rental anywhere. Anyway, that being said, we're gonna move on to building equity for your future home. Again, this is gonna take time, but don't fixate on the fact that your first house is gonna be a little smaller, maybe not in your ideal neighborhood and not in the perfect condition that you wanted, because it's a stepping stone to the next point, right? And down payment assistance. So a lot of people cite the down payment as their biggest or only barrier to buying a house. And in some cases, yes, that's correct. In some cases, it isn't. And I've said this so many times, but honestly, you don't know what's out there until you ask and you try. There are so many programs available for people who are first-time home buyers. There are programs out there for people of different professions. And there's even the USDA loan, which is 0% down, depending on the area, if it's like an underdeveloped area. VA loans, if you're military, 0% down up to like $400,000 or something crazy, as long as you can pay it back, right? So don't let that disqualify you. Just ask, just figure it out. Maybe there's options, maybe there's not. All right, so we've talked about the positives and all these things that are very good. I want to say a couple of things that you really, really don't want to do, okay? You don't want to stretch your budget to the max. You don't want to be house poor. The second something breaks in that house, that's on you. You're paying for that. It's expensive. You get to a point where you get stoked to only have to spend like $500 at a time. It's sad. You need a nest egg, set it aside. And you also want to be able to, have a decent life, go out with your friends every once in a while for maybe a drink or two, like enjoy the neighborhood that you're paying all this money to live in, right? And like I said, don't fixate on the fact that it's your starter home. This is just a stepping stone. And don't buy with the expectation that you're gonna immediately turn some sort of profit. Like if you're buying because you think that you're like a makeshift, wonderkin real estate investor who's gonna buy this house and then flip it next year for a profit or whatever, I would caution you against doing that unless you like have some actual reason to believe that there's validity to that. Because in general, like I said previously, you don't really start to develop equity for the first 3 years, okay? So just keep that in mind. If you're buying this house with the immediate expectation to flip it and make a profit, I'm not your agent. I wouldn't want to work with you. I would discourage you from doing that, okay? And oh, the other thing is that most people don't realize it, but selling your house costs money. So that's a whole other thing. Like if you're looking at buying a home, this is a different situation, right? But when you go to sell your house, you have to pay to do that. Okay. And real estate is local. So don't listen to people who are in markets that are nothing like yours. I mean, if someone's in the Midwest and they just bought a house and you're talking to them about buying a house in Tampa, Florida, two completely different markets. And even in Tampa, Florida, you know, it can be raining on one side of the street and then bright and sunny on the other. Real estate is hyper local, so local, literally down to the street, okay? So you wanna make sure that you're working with someone who understands that and is able to do the necessary research to figure out what's best for you, all right? And don't buy before you know what you're doing. This is a big point that I wanna make. Do not buy a house because you think it's just the right thing to do and everyone else is doing it, or like you're creeping up on your 30s and you feel like, yeah, I need to buy a house right now. Don't do this because you feel like the world is telling you to do it. Do it when you're ready. Buy a house when you're ready to buy a house. Buy a house when you're educated, when you have the money, when you're in a position to really take responsibility for that house. Because again, there's no one else you're gonna call. It's gonna be all you, right? So this is a super long video, and this is the longest video I've made yet, which is fine. I apologize for having to use the script. I just didn't want to miss anything. And I'm not, feeling too hot, so I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys go. But is there anything else that you guys want to talk about? Does this make sense? I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to be real with you. And again, if you're looking for a realtor who's going to fluff you and give you rainbows and unicorns, I'm not that agent. I strive to educate you. Okay, I want you to make good decisions with your money because these are big decisions, all right, guys? That being said, let me know if you want to learn about anything in this series. As always, you just, take care, stay happy, healthy, productive, and blessed.